For nearly 1,000 years, the Valari Empire and the Human Alliance fought across countless star systems. Entire planets were turned into ashes. Children grew up knowing only the sound of sirens and the glow of warships above their skies. But now, for the first time in centuries, both sides were ready to stop fighting. They were tired, broken, and desperate for peace. And to seal that peace, a marriage was arranged between Princess Kalyra of Valari and Commander Ethan Ward of Earth. It was not a love story. It was politics, at least at first. Kalyra stood before a mirror in her chamber, wearing a silver ceremonial dress woven with threads of light. Her people believed she was their symbol of strength, the one who would keep their honor even in peace. But as she looked at her reflection, she saw doubt in her eyes. "Marry a human," she whispered softly, "a fragile creature from a small blue planet." Her maid, a quiet Valari girl named Lyra, lowered her head. "Your Highness, this union will save billions. Perhaps humans are not as weak as we think." Kalyra smiled faintly but said nothing. In her heart, she carried the weight of her people's pride. The Valari had ruled the stars for ages, their technology older than human civilization itself. To her, humans were newcomers, brave, yes, but reckless and emotional. They did not understand balance or tradition. Still, duty was duty. She had sworn to protect her empire, even if that meant giving up her own choices. Far across the galaxy, on a human battleship named Valor's Reach, Ethan Ward adjusted his collar nervously. He wasn't used to royal ceremonies. He had spent most of his life in battle armor, not formal clothes. His face showed the calm of a soldier, but his hands were slightly trembling. His friend, Captain Jonas, patted him on the shoulder. "You look like you're walking into an execution, Commander." Ethan laughed lightly. "Maybe I am. Marrying an alien princess? That's a first, even for me." "You're doing this for peace," Jonas reminded him. "If anyone can make it work, it's you." Ethan nodded, staring at the endless stars outside the ship's window. He had seen too many wars, too many graves. He didn't care for glory or titles. He only wanted to make sure humanity didn't destroy itself before learning how to live among the stars. The wedding took place on Visara, the golden capital world of the Valari Empire. The skies glowed like molten sunlight, and the palace shimmered with glass towers reaching into the clouds. Every royal, officer, and ambassador across the galaxy attended. There was tension in the air, the kind that came before a storm. Kalyra entered the grand hall with her head held high, her face calm and unreadable. She was tall, elegant, and carried herself like a queen born to command. Her eyes, silver with faint golden lines, looked across the hall where Ethan stood waiting at the center. He looked different from the other men she had met, not tall by Valari standards, not shining with bioluminescent skin or crystal armor, just a man in a simple dark uniform standing straight with quiet confidence. As she approached, he bowed slightly, his eyes meeting hers with calm respect. "Princess Kalyra," he said. "It's an honor." His voice was steady, polite, but not fearful. Kalyra tilted her head slightly, surprised by his composure. "Commander Ward," she replied. "Let us hope our marriage will end what our armies could not." The ceremony began. Valari priests spoke in ancient tongues while human delegates recorded every word. The moment they joined hands, a surge of light filled the room, a symbol of unity between two worlds. The audience applauded, though many faces still looked uncertain. But when Ethan spoke his vows, the hall fell silent. "I do not promise perfection," he said clearly, "but I promise peace, not through power, but through faith, faith that even enemies can find understanding." His words, simple and honest, reached every corner of the hall. Even Kalyra felt something stir inside her. He was not pretending. He truly believed in peace. When the ceremony ended, they stood side by side before thousands. To the galaxy, they were symbols of unity, but to each other they were strangers bound by duty. Later that night, Kalyra and Ethan met privately on the palace balcony. The city of Visara glittered below them, floating platforms, silver rivers, and light-filled towers stretching to the stars. Ethan leaned on the railing, watching the view. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. Kalyra joined him, her tone measured. "Beauty often hides the scars of war. You cannot see them from here, but this world still bleeds." Ethan nodded. "On Earth, we have the same problem. We hide pain under lights." She looked at him then, truly looked. He wasn't like the human officers she had seen before, loud, arrogant, and proud. There was calm in him, a stillness that seemed almost ancient. "You don't seem afraid," she said finally. "Of you?" Ethan smiled slightly. "I've fought things that didn't smile back." Kalira almost laughed, but she held it in. Still, there was warmth in her eyes now. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. For the first time, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, peace could exist between their kinds. But far below the palace, in the dark chambers of the Valari High Command, not everyone celebrated. General Terran Vek, one of the most feared Valari warlords, stood before a holographic map of the galaxy. His crimson armor gleamed under the dim light. Around him stood other commanders, veterans who had fought against humans for decades. "This union is a disgrace," Terran growled. "Our princess married a human, a creature of flesh and bone. What will our ancestors say?" One of his officers spoke nervously. "But General, the war has drained our forces." "The people need peace," Terran turned, his golden eyes burning. "Peace built on weakness is not peace, it's surrender. The humans will use this marriage to control us. I will not allow it." He pressed a control panel, and a secret network of loyal soldiers appeared on the hologram. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered coldly. "When the time is right, we will remind them what Valari strength truly means." The next morning, Kalira woke to the soft sound of music outside her chamber. She stepped out to find Ethan in the training courtyard, surrounded by Valari guards. He was practicing with a Valari energy staff, trying to learn their style. Her guards watched with amusement. "He will never master it," one of them said. "Humans lack the reflexes," but Ethan was focused, calm, and determined. He stumbled at first, but kept trying. His movements grew sharper, faster, more balanced. Sweat ran down his forehead, but his expression never changed. Kalira stood silently watching. There was something mesmerizing about the way he refused to give up, not for pride, but for purpose. When he finally noticed her, he smiled. "Good morning, Princess. I was trying not to break your courtyard." She raised an eyebrow. "You almost did." He laughed, and for the first time, Kalira allowed herself to smile too. It was small, almost hidden, but real. Maybe this human wasn't what she expected. That night, the palace glowed under twin moons. The couple sat across a long table during a formal dinner with diplomats from both races. Words of hope filled the air, but Kalira could sense the unease among her nobles. Their smiles were hollow. After the dinner, Ethan whispered quietly to her, "They don't trust me." "They don't trust anyone," she replied softly. "Valari hearts are slow to change." Ethan looked thoughtful. "Then I'll just have to give them a reason to believe." Kalira turned to him. "And if they never do?" He smiled faintly. "Then I'll believe enough for both of us." His words stayed with her long after he left. She stood by her window, gazing at the stars, wondering what kind of man could fight for peace when everyone else prepared for war. In the distant darkness of space, Terran Vek's fleet moved silently toward Visara. The peace had begun, but so had the danger. Weeks had passed since the wedding of Princess Kalira and Commander Ethan Ward. The galaxy began to breathe again. Warships returned to their hangars. Soldiers laid down their weapons. Trade routes opened. And for the first time in centuries, both humans and Valari could look at each other without aiming a gun. The golden capital of Visara filled with the sounds of rebuilding, the hum of repair drones, the laughter of children, the music of festivals celebrating peace. But under all that noise there was still tension, like a storm hiding beneath the sun. Kalira spent her days balancing between her people and her new husband. The Valari nobles watched every step she took. Some admired her for ending the war. Others whispered behind her back that she had betrayed her blood. Ethan noticed the looks too, but he didn't complain. He understood what it was like to be seen as an outsider. He had faced worse during battles. Now words could not wound him. Still, he did everything he could to help. He met with Valari engineers, studied their technology, and worked alongside them to build joint projects between their two civilizations. He believed that peace wasn't made by signatures. It was built piece by people who refused to give up. One morning, Kalira found Ethan in the palace courtyard, surrounded by young Valari cadets. He was showing them how humans trained for combat, not with strength but with strategy. "Humans fight with what we have," he told them. "We can't fly, we can't breathe in space, and we can't regenerate like some of you. But we never stop learning. That's what keeps us alive. The cadets listened with surprise. To them, humans had always been seen as reckless warriors. But Ethan's calm teaching made them see something else: discipline and patience. Kalira stood by, watching him. Every day she found him harder to understand. He was not like the human commanders she had read about. He was humble, focused, and strangely gentle, yet she could sense a quiet fire behind his calm eyes. But far away, in the shadows of space, General Taran Vek was not at peace. Inside a dark warship orbiting a dead moon, he stood before a group of rebel officers. The hologram of Visara glowed between them, its golden light reflected in Taran's armor. "Our people have grown weak," Taran said in a cold, commanding tone. "They follow a human now. A human who wears our crown through marriage. It is an insult to every warrior who died in battle." One officer spoke hesitantly. "The princess believes this union brings strength." Taran slammed his fist against the table. "Strength? Strength does not bow. Strength does not mix with the enemy. She has blinded herself, but we will open her eyes." He turned to the others. "We attack soon. Quietly. Swiftly. Before the human learns the truth. That peace is only a pause before victory." The officers nodded in silence. The rebellion had begun. Back on Visara, Kalira walked through the Royal Council chambers reading reports. Small riots had started in outer colonies. Some Valari soldiers refused to follow orders from human officers. Tensions were rising again. When she entered the council room, Ethan was already there discussing with advisors. He looked up at her and smiled slightly. "Morning, Princess. Bad news, I assume?" She nodded. "Rebel activity. Small for now, but growing." Ethan's expression became serious. "We should act fast before it spreads," Kalira sighed. "You speak as if my people will listen to you. Many of them still refuse to take orders from a human." Ethan leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. "Then I won't give them orders. I'll give them results. That's something soldiers understand." His confidence made her curious. "You think you can stop a rebellion with words?" He shook his head. "No, but I can show them that peace is worth fighting for." There was something in his tone. Not arrogance, but a quiet promise. Kalira studied him carefully. She could not decide whether he was brave or foolish. Maybe both. That evening, they attended a diplomatic gathering between human and Valari delegates. The hall glittered with crystal lights and floating orbs. Speeches were made and toasts were raised. On the surface, everything looked perfect. But Kalira could feel the unease, the polite smiles hiding distrust. Ethan stayed calm, answering every question with patience and humor. When one Valari senator made a remark about human fragility, Ethan simply smiled. "Maybe. But fragile things can survive storms if they bend instead of break." Kalira almost laughed at his reply. It was clever, simple, and respectful, the kind of answer that left no room for insult. After the gathering, she joined him on the balcony overlooking the city once again. "You speak like a poet, Commander," she said softly. "Old habit," he replied. In war, words can be as powerful as weapons. Kalira looked at him under the moonlight. "You really believe peace can last, don't you?" Ethan turned toward her. "I have to believe. Otherwise, what did we fight for?" His voice carried no doubt. And for the first time, Kalira felt a strange comfort in his presence. Days later, trouble finally reached them. A small Valari mining colony on the edge of the Empire was attacked. Rebel ships appeared suddenly, destroying communications and capturing outposts. The news hit the palace like a thunderclap. Kalira summoned her generals immediately. Ethan was there beside her, silent but alert. "The rebels have taken the Kaleth sector," one officer reported. "They are led by former General Taran Vek. He has a fleet fast-armed and loyal." Kalira clenched her fists. "Taran again. I should have known." Ethan stepped forward. "We can't let this spread. If he gains control of the border, others will join him." The generals exchanged uncertain looks. One of them said coldly, "You speak as if you are one of us, human." The tension in the room grew heavy. Kalira's eyes flashed with anger. "Enough," she said firmly. "Commander Ward speaks with my authority. You will treat him with respect." The generals fell silent. Ethan gave her a grateful nod. After the meeting, as they walked down the corridor, he said quietly, "You didn't have to defend me." "I didn't," Kalira replied. "But I did because you were right." He smiled faintly. That's new. Kalira couldn't help but return the smile. For the first time since the war ended, she felt like they were truly on the same side. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He stood near the balcony again, watching the stars. Every soldier's instinct in him screamed that danger was coming. He could almost smell it in the air, that strange calm before the chaos. Kalira joined him silently. "You sense it too?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "The rebellion won't stop at one colony. Terran is testing us by waiting to see if we're too afraid to fight back." Kalira's expression hardened. "Then he will learn that peace does not mean weakness." Ethan turned to her. "You might have to choose between your people's pride and the safety of your world." Her voice was steady. "If war returns, I will fight beside you." Ethan looked at her for a long moment. "You don't have to." "I do," she said softly. "Because this peace is ours. Not yours. Not mine. Ours." For the first time, their alliance felt real, not arranged, not political, but born from shared purpose. The next day, their fears came true. The sky above Visara turned crimson as explosions echoed in orbit. Rebel ships had appeared, massive vessels carrying the mark of Terran Vec. The city's defenses activated instantly, filling the sky with energy shields and glowing lines of fire. Ethan ran to the command center with Kalira beside him. "All ships to defense positions," she ordered. "Protect the capital." Ethan quickly scanned the incoming signals. "They're not here to destroy the city," he said grimly. "They're here to take you." Kalira's eyes widened. "To take me?" "Terran wants to end the treaty. Killing you or taking you hostage would break the alliance overnight." Before they could react further, a massive blast shook the palace. The lights flickered. Guards rushed through the halls. The sound of alarms filled the air. Kalira turned to Ethan. "What do we do?" Ethan's calm eyes met hers. "We fight." Outside the window, the night sky burned as enemy ships descended toward the golden towers. The peace they built was shattering, and soon, the galaxy would see what kind of warrior a human could be. Bright warning lights flashed through the marble corridors as soldiers and guards ran in every direction. The sky outside turned red, filled with fire and falling debris. Rebel ships marked with the sigil of General Terran Vec descended through the atmosphere like thunder. Kalira stood at the center of the chaos, her royal gown replaced with light armor. Her calm expression hid the fear in her heart. "Get the civilians to the shelters," she ordered. "Protect the council chambers. Do not let the rebels near the command center." Her guards bowed and rushed away. Ethan Ward, standing beside her, adjusted his own armor, simple, old, and scratched from countless battles. He held a plasma rifle in one hand and a comlink in the other. "Communications down," he said grimly. "They've jammed every frequency." Kalira looked at him. "They planned this well." Ethan nodded. "Terran's no fool. He's trying to take the capital before the fleet can react." Outside, the first explosion struck the outer walls. The sound of battle echoed through the palace. Ethan glanced toward Kalira, who was already giving new orders to her guards. He admired her composure, a true leader even in chaos. Then another explosion shook the floor and the lights flickered. Ethan turned to the guards near the entrance. "You take positions at the east gate. Don't wait for orders, just move." The guards hesitated for a second, and he was human, not one of their own. But something in his voice, firm and commanding, made them obey. They rushed out without argument. Kalira noticed and gave him a small, approving look. "They listen to you," she said. "Soldiers know a battlefield when they see one," he replied. "Rank doesn't matter when survival's on the line." Moments later, the enemy breached the palace walls. Rebels in dark silver armor stormed in, firing energy blasts. The marble floors cracked and burned. Ethan took cover behind a column and returned fire, his aim precise and deadly. Kalira fought beside her guards, her energy blade flashing through the smoke. Despite her royal background, she moved like a trained warrior. But there were too many enemies. Ethan noticed her group being surrounded and charged forward. "Fall back toward the throne room," he shouted. "We hold there." Kalira hesitated. "We'll be trapped." "Only if we stop fighting," Ethan replied. Together they retreated through the burning corridors. The walls once filled with peace banners now glowed with fire. Ethan covered the rear, moving with disciplined focus. Every shot he fired found its mark. His movements were fast, efficient, not like the graceful fighting style of the Volari, but raw and relentless. At one point, a rebel aimed at Kalira's back. Ethan saw it and threw himself between them, taking the hit on his shoulder armor. He stumbled but stayed standing. Kalira turned, eyes wide. "You're hurt." "Not enough to stop me," he grunted, firing back and clearing their path. They reached the throne room, the largest chamber in the palace. Massive golden doors sealed behind them as Ethan and Kalira took position with a handful of loyal soldiers. Smoke drifted through the cracks. For a brief moment there was silence, the calm before another wave. Kalira walked up to Ethan, her expression softening. "You could have been killed," she said quietly. Ethan shrugged. "That's war. You protect what matters no matter the cost." Kalira looked at him. Truly looked. This man, this human, had no armor of pride or fear. Just will, just purpose. Something in her chest tightened, but she pushed it away. There was no time for feelings now. Then the golden doors shook again. The rebels were cutting through with plasma saws. Kalira turned to her soldiers. "Hold your ground. For your world. For peace," the soldiers saluted. Ethan reloaded his weapon and stood at her side. When the doors finally broke open, a storm of light and noise filled the room. The rebels poured in like a flood. Ethan fired without hesitation, hitting target after target. His voice rose above the chaos and giving orders, rallying the defenders, shouting for cover and angles. "Left flank. Push them back. Guard the queen. Keep moving, don't let them pin us." Kalira fought beside him, her blade glowing bright blue. Sparks danced around them as enemy fire hit the walls. The defenders slowly pushed back, step by step. To the Volari soldiers, it was like watching a legend come alive. Ethan moved like a man possessed, fearless and focused. Even when the air was thick with smoke and laser fire, he didn't waver. His uniform was scorched, his armor cracked, but his eyes burned with determination. Kalira shouted over the noise, "They're retreating." Ethan glanced around the smoke-filled room. "No, they're regrouping." A deep metallic voice answered from the other side of the hall, cold and powerful. "You always were quick to see the truth. Human." Out of the smoke walked General Terran Vec, his armor black and gold, his glowing eyes fixed on Kalira. Around him stood elite guards, their weapons humming. "Kalira," Terran said, his tone sharp. "Your father would weep to see you bow before a human." Kalira stood tall, her chin high. "My father died for peace. You destroy it," Terran's gaze shifted to Ethan. "And you, the human who thinks he can command gods." Ethan wiped the sweat from his forehead and aimed his rifle. "I don't command gods. I fight them." Terran smiled cruelly. "Then you die today." With a roar, Terran charged forward, his massive blade cutting through the air. The impact shook the floor. Ethan dodged barely in time and fired, but Terran's armor deflected the shots. Kalira moved in beside Ethan, striking with her own energy blade. Sparks flew as their weapons clashed. The throne room became a storm of light and sound. Kalira fought fiercely, but Terran was stronger. He pushed her back, breaking her guard. Ethan jumped in, slamming his rifle's barrel into Terran's helmet, denting it. The warlord struck back, hitting Ethan across the chest and sending him crashing into the wall. Kalira screamed, "Ethan!" He coughed, blood at the corner of his mouth, but pushed himself up again. "Not done yet," Terran laughed. "You humans never know when to stay down." Ethan charged forward again. He grabbed a fallen energy blade and swung it with both hands, meeting Terran blow for blow. The shock waves from their strikes cracked the marble floors. The Volari soldiers stared in disbelief. A human, standing toe-to-toe with one of the greatest Volari warriors alive. Kalira joined the fight again, moving in sync with Ethan. Their blades flashed together, pushing Terran back step by step. Ethan's breathing was heavy, his body trembling, but his will did not break. Terran roared in anger and struck with full force, knocking both of them down. He raised his sword for the final blow, but Ethan moved faster. Using the last of his strength, he tackled Terran and drove the glowing blade deep into the warlord's armor. The energy discharge exploded outward, throwing them both apart. When the light faded, Terran fell to his knees, smoke rising from his armor. His voice broke into a low growl. "You are no ordinary man." Ethan stood, bleeding and exhausted. "No, just human." With that, Terran collapsed, his weapon falling silent. The remaining rebels, seeing their leader fall, dropped their weapons. The throne room grew quiet again, filled only with the hum of dying fires. Kalira rushed to Ethan, catching him before he fell. His uniform was torn, his hands trembling, but he was still breathing. "You should be resting," she whispered, tears in her eyes. He smiled weakly. "Can't. Peace needs guarding." She held his hand tightly. "You fought like no one I've ever seen, like a god of war." Ethan shook his head slowly. "Not a god, just someone who refuses to lose." Outside, the sky of Vasara began to clear. The rebel fleet was retreating. The palace stood, scarred but unbroken. Kalira looked out the window, then back at the man in her arms. She had married him for peace, but now she understood what kind of peace he brought. Not one built on fear, but on courage. And in that moment she knew the galaxy would remember this human forever. The city of Vasara was silent when the sun rose. The smoke from the night's battle drifted slowly into the golden sky. The once beautiful palace stood half-ruined, its marble walls cracked and burned. Yet among the ruins there was a strange peace, a kind of quiet pride that filled the air. The war was over. Ethan Ward lay on the palace steps, his armor torn and scorched. The medics surrounded him, their glowing tools humming softly as they tried to close his wounds. He was weak but alive. When Kalira reached him, she felt her heart tighten. The man who had come to her world as a stranger, as a symbol of peace, had fought like a storm that refused to end. "Ethan," she whispered, kneeling beside him, "you shouldn't have done that." He smiled faintly through his pain. "I told you I'd end your wars, remember?" His voice was soft, but his eyes were alive, sharp, full of the same quiet strength that had carried him through fire. Around them, the Valari soldiers, proud and tall beings once divided by hate, now stood together. Even those who had fought for the rebel commander, Terran Vec, lowered their weapons. They had seen something that broke every lie they had been told. A human had stood against them and refused to fall. Kalira rose slowly, facing her army. Her silver hair shone in the new light, her eyes calm but fierce. "Our peace," she said aloud, her voice carrying across the square, "was not built on politics. It was built on courage. It was built on faith. His faith." The soldiers bowed their heads. In that moment, even the proud Valari understood something deep. That greatness was not in strength of body, but in strength of spirit. As Ethan was carried back inside the palace for treatment, Kalira followed, refusing to leave his side. Hours passed. The healers worked quietly, while outside the city began to rebuild. When Ethan finally opened his eyes again, Kalira was sitting near him, her armor still dusty, her expression unreadable. "You saved them," she said quietly. He gave a tired smile. "I didn't save them alone. You fought beside me." Kalira looked down. "I only did what a ruler should do, but you did what no one thought possible. You turned my people's anger into hope." Ethan shifted slightly, wincing. "Hope's a powerful weapon," he said. "You just have to keep holding it." For the first time, Kalira laughed softly. "You humans, you always sound so simple when you speak. Yet somehow your words reach deeper than our ancient wisdom." Ethan chuckled weakly. "Maybe it's because humans don't have centuries to learn, we just feel faster." Days later, the Valari Council gathered to declare the rebellion officially over. Kalira stood before them, Ethan beside her, his wounds mostly healed. The council members, once proud and cold, now looked at the human with new eyes. Elder Mirren, the oldest among them, spoke first. "We have seen your kind fight. We have seen your kind lead. But we have never seen one of your kind believed in by Valari hearts. Commander Ethan Ward, the council honors you." The hall filled with respectful silence as Myron raised his hands in salute. Ethan, uncomfortable with the attention, simply bowed his head. "I only did what anyone would have done," he said humbly. But the elder shook his head. "No, few would fight for those who doubted them. Fewer still would bleed for those who called them weak. You are different, human. You fought not as an outsider, but as one of us." After the ceremony, Kalira and Ethan walked through the palace gardens. What little of them remained. The flowers had been burned, the fountains broken, but the air smelled fresh after the storm. "Do you ever regret it?" Kalira asked quietly. "Marrying into a world that hated you?" Ethan looked at the horizon. "No," he said simply. "If peace needed a human face, then I'm glad it was mine. I just wish it didn't take so much fighting to prove we meant it." Kalira nodded slowly. "You have changed more than my world, Ethan. You have changed me." I once believed peace was a cold word written in treaties. But now I see. Peace is born when someone decides to stand up and say enough. You did that. He turned to her, smiling softly. We both did. Time passed. The Valari began rebuilding their cities, but this time with the help of humans. Joint stations were built between their planets. Soldiers who once fought each other now trained side by side. Children of both races grew up together, listening to stories of the human who fought like a god. The tale spread across the galaxy, of a man who came not with threats, but with courage, who won not by destroying enemies, but by showing them what true strength was. One evening, months after the battle, Kalira found Ethan standing on the palace balcony, watching the stars. He had recovered, but his eyes carried the memory of war. The sky looks different now, he said quietly. How so? She asked. Before it felt full of danger. Now it feels peaceful, like it's finally breathing again. Kalira stepped beside him. That peace came at a price. Ethan nodded. It always does. But if it means no more children will grow up in fear, then it's worth every scar. She looked at him for a long time. Do you know what they call you now among my people? He smiled faintly. I've heard a few names. They call you Warborn, she said softly. The one who carries both peace and war in his heart. Ethan chuckled. Warborn? That's dramatic, she smiled gently. Maybe. But legends always are. A soft breeze moved through the balcony. The stars shimmered like silver dust above them. Kalira took a deep breath. When I first met you, I thought you were sent here to end my freedom. But now I see you were sent to end our fear. He turned to her, his expression calm but full of warmth. Maybe peace needs a little fight in it, he said. Kalira laughed quietly. And maybe even gods of war need a reason to rest. For a long time they stood there in silence, watching as the lights of the city flickered back to life below them. The people of Valari were rebuilding not out of fear but out of hope. Later that night, a group of young Valari soldiers stood at the same balcony where the human and their queen had once faced the fire. They spoke quietly among themselves, looking at the stars. Do you think humans are really that strong? One asked. Another smiled. Not strong like us. Strong like something else. Like they refuse to stop. The third nodded. Maybe that's their real power. They don't give up no matter what. Below, in the city square, a new statue was being built. It showed two figures, one Valari, one human, standing side by side holding the same flag. At the base, a simple line was carved. Peace is not given. It is fought for, together. When Kalira and Ethan walked past the statue weeks later, she paused to read the words. You never told me you helped write that, she said. Ethan smiled. Didn't need to. It's not my line. It's our story. The story of a human who came for peace and fought like a god of war, and not to conquer but to protect. A story that would live for generations, whispered by children under alien skies. A story that proved once and for all that humanity's greatest weapon was its heart. And as the stars shone over the reborn world, the Queen of Valari stood beside her husband, knowing that the future, once uncertain, now belonged to both their kinds. Because peace, once born from courage, never truly dies. It only grows stronger with every hand that dares to hold it.